Welcome, and I'd like to this week welcome Bill Lafayette to Workforce 3.0. Thank you, Bill, for taking time with us today to talk about Central Ohio's economy.
Well, thank you for asking, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
So, Bill, you have a great reputation in Central Ohio, and nobody is going to be surprised when I refer to you as the most entertaining economist in Central Ohio, and potentially maybe the whole country, honestly, since I've had to hear several. And can you tell me, how did you get here? What made you decide to do this, and how did you become our authority that we all turn to find out where we're going?
Well, I started life wanting to be a college professor, and there were a number of twists and turns and no good jobs in the field that I wanted to go into when I graduated. That was real estate. And so I kind of stumbled into economic development. I was at Rickenbacker Port Authority for 4 years, and I allowed myself then to get stolen by the Columbus Chamber. And I was their economist for 12 years. And I went out on my own 10 years ago. So uh, I suppose I'm still a teacher. I get to teach at the John Glenn College once a year, including right now. But um, but overall, I see my job as really helping people understand what's going on in the economy and the workforce that immediately surrounds them so that they can make better policy choices.
I can understand why you may have wanted to be a teacher, because I think part of why people are always asking you to speak is because you break it down in ways that everyone can understand. And some people are intimidated by economics, and you make it understandable. And so I think I can see now why you might want to have been a teacher. Well, so let's get down to the meat of it. So as you know, right, we've been in a pandemic. I don't think anybody doesn't know that at this point. And it looks like for the first time, Columbus and Franklin County in particular, but all of Central Ohio, we've certainly been hit hard and haven't been insulated, perhaps as we are sometimes in a recession. And what are your thoughts about that? About the hit we took and where we might go from here?
Well, Central Ohio lost more than 14% of our employment in 2 months. It was unlike anything that we'd ever seen before, but it was actually a tad less than the national average and a good bit less than the state average. And that loss was really driven by leisure and hospitality, which lost about half of its employment in 2 months. 50,000 jobs vaporized. Other service industries, though, financial services, professional technical services, corporate management, and construction and manufacturing and government too, lost a whole lot less. In the case of those services, it was simply because their staff could work from home. And so they didn't have to shut down. Now, financial services is completely back. Our employment now is higher than it was in February 2020, and other industries aren't quite there yet, but they're coming back. So as of May, our economy was off 4.7% from where we were February a year ago. So we're down about 53,000 jobs yet. But Ohio is off 5.7 versus our 4.7. The US is off about 5. And the bulk of that is continued weakness in leisure and hospitality. And it's going to be a good while before that comes back all the way. Uh, but the Metropolitan Club had a tremendous forum yesterday on the return of live events. It's really worth looking that up on the CMC channel on YouTube and watching it. It was really very optimistic. The convention center's getting events back, including a scaled down Arnold in September. And uh, a really cool story is that the general manager of the Columbus Symphony was there. And she said that the Columbus Symphony never stopped paying their musicians, unlike most orchestras nationwide. And they switched to virtual events, educational events. As a result of that, they got a shout out in the New Yorker. And that whole commitment to the well-being of their musicians is really helping them attract truly top-notch talent.
Yeah, that I actually was able to see some of the work that they did. And I think for people who had not pivoted to providing their work or their services virtually, were, if they could do it, were able to do it pretty quickly. And I agree that that helped. Now for the leisure and hotel, and you say it probably it's slower coming back. They're also facing a talent shortage, as they are calling me, and we're trying to work with them what their best strategies are. But what do you think about this lack of talent or this feeling by employers in certain sectors? And it appears to me to be lower wage sectors not being able to attract talent back into the workplace right now.
Well, I think part of it's due to the fact that we are reopening and growing so quickly. We saw 6.4% growth in nationwide GDP, and that's just pretty much off the chart. And so just the speed of the reopening means that people have people are needing to attract talent at a very rapid rate, and the labor market really isn't supplying that talent to that extent. Um, and part of it is specifically with leisure and hospitality, uh, really got the props knocked out from under it. And so people are people have maybe moved on, gotten
Mhm.
into other um, areas like transportation and distribution, which in most cases pays better, and that is another of the industries that is completely back in Central Ohio. So um, there are probably some folks who were in leisure and hospitality um, year and a half ago who aren't there now and never will be there. So
Mhm.
it's developing a new pipeline in part.
I completely agree with that. In fact, I suggest to them, to those working in that particular sector, that job quality is going to have to be the differentiating factor, I think, if
Mhm.
wages can't be, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. You,
yeah.
if this pandemic's done one thing, it has it's augmented the ability of workers to ask for better working conditions, ask for working from home.
Mhm. What do you think are, when you're looking forward to, well, first of all, I think, do you think that there is going to be continued fierce competition in the Central Ohio market for talent,
Oh
good
yeah,
talent?
no doubt about it. And that applies economy wide. We've we've been growing now for more than a decade, at a rate faster than the national average. Fortunately, our population's growing at a rate faster than the national average, but we're being hit with a demographic bomb in the sense that we have an aging population, we have lots of retirements, and we have fewer people coming into the labor market to replace the folks who are leaving. The projections of the Ohio Development Services Agency are that we're going to see very low rates of growth in the prime working age categories, say 25 to 59, over the next 10 or 15 years. And that's a nationwide problem. So it's not going to help us to try to attract folks from other markets to feed our workforce because they're being attracted by their own workforce.
Mhm, mhm. So that puts us similar then to what's happening in the European economies then, isn't
Yes,
it?
very much so, although to a somewhat lesser degree, and to a lesser degree in Columbus than in other places because our population is somewhat younger than average.
Mhm, mhm,
It's something that we saw coming 15 years ago,
mhm.
and we were all saying 15 years ago, and I think you were saying too that
Yes,
that this is coming, and
right,
by golly,
right.
it did, and it's here.
Right. Yes, I was. Has it been that long ago? Goodness, it has. But yes, yeah, absolutely. So, given that that's the case, what things do you think we need to be doing now to try to turn that trend? I don't know that we will buck that trend. It sounds like more mitigating as much as we can that trend. What do you think we should be doing moving forward?
Well, I think part of it is that we don't have and will never have uh, the funding to do everything for everybody. And so we have to be really strategic. And I know that you're taking this approach already, but I think it's really important to lay it out. Um, you have to pay attention to the driver industries of the local economy. That is, industries that are bigger than average and growing faster than average. Because of their growth,
Mhm,
they are in a position to offer stable employment with a greater uh, opportunity for advancement than other industries are. And the reason why they're growing so fast, the reason why the firms in those industries are outgrowing their competitors who are located elsewhere is probably because of a set of environmental and economic characteristics uh, that are here and are nowhere else. And
mhm.
so you need to focus on that. You need to try to steer your clients to that. Um, Education and training were always critical. They're more critical now than they ever were before. The
Mhm.
environment, the economy is evolving faster and faster and faster. So people have to have access, ready access to affordable training and education opportunities, including the wraparound services that allow them to access education and training opportunities. And the last point is that workforce development has to be working hand in glove with economic development. If workforce development goals are out of sync with, say, what One Columbus is doing or um, Licking County Economic Development is doing, then you both fail and our broader economy fails and your clients fail. So that is just as important as everything else.
And I didn't even pay you to say that. Thank you. No, I totally agree. We've got to work hand in hand because, if I fail, actually economic development fails. And if economic development fails, right, we fail. So
Most certainly.
and I've always thought of it as a three-legged stool with workforce development, economic development, and community development, right?
Sure.
Having, those policies, housing, childcare, all of the transportation, all of those other things. And if any of those is broken, it's very hard for the system to work well, right?
Mhm. Housing's a big concern, a huge concern.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And to our brethren in the suburbs, where we have even more, I see more hospitals being built along 270 and now outside of 270. There's a lot of entry-level jobs there. Where are
Mhm.
those people going to come from? If we
Right.
don't have the right transportation, if people can't live there, right?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. I'm going to bring you with me on everything I talk about. To whoever I talk to now, I'm going to say, now listen, Bill, will back me.
Yeah. 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 Transportation is another thing that really has to be addressed. And I'm certainly hoping that this new funding that's coming from the federal government is going to help us with that.
Mhm. Absolutely. And then what do you think about childcare as an economist? We need the childcare so that women, men and women, but women in a lot of ways, especially during this pandemic, can be involved in work. Childcare is a low wage job right
Mhm.
now, and therefore they cannot attract talent. And it just seems like a catch-22 almost.
Mhm. Yeah, the pay for a childcare worker is uh, ridiculously low given the importance of what they're doing. And the cost of childcare is really, really high. I just saw a statistic from the MIT Living Wage Calculator that
Mhm.
the cost of unsubsidized childcare in Franklin County is more than $10,000 per year. And that translates to about $5 an hour. And that kind of expenditure, especially if you have more than one child, you're talking $10 an hour for two children. That can strain even a middle income household.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I worked with Morpsey to develop these COVID-19 policy briefs that were just released the other week. I was responsible uh, for the employment and small business brief, and there's a quote of a statistic in there that 6% of potential workers are not in the labor force because of the cost and unavailability of childcare. And
Mhm.
so, if we can solve the childcare problem, which is a heavy, heavy lift, if we can solve that problem, then that's going to do a good bit to reduce this chronic workforce shortage that we are
Mhm.
facing now and will continue to face.
So that brings me to wonder, as companies, businesses are attracting talent, that the kinds of benefits they might offer, uh, where they may not have seen these benefits as really important, really are. And so, a child care benefit, seems to be one that companies really ought to consider, even smaller companies who can band with other companies in an area with a childcare or several childcare providers.
Mhm.
I think that, right, because the cost of the churn of trying to get talent in, talent leaving because the children aren't cared for, or not being able to attract them in the first place, I've got to believe, but I hope you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that that total cost versus some kind of childcare benefit to help retain the employees you've got, I've got to believe that in the overall cost of business might actually be cheaper. But
Yeah,
I,
I I I would tend to agree. I did a study years ago, probably 2012 or something like that, where I was looking at the cost of recruiting talent in warehouse jobs, which are certainly better paying than hospitality jobs for the most part, but still very low paying. And you're talking well into the well above $10,000 a year by the time you've figured in the cost of advertising the position, the cost of screening applicants, the cost of hiring and onboarding an applicant, the cost of training, the lost productivity throughout the hiring and training process. You're well above 10,000. And so, I mean, it makes sense. It really does. Another thing that we have to address along those lines is the benefits cliff, um, and that's the problem there, as you know, is just the idea that child care benefits exist to a certain point, and then they stop as income rises. And so that leads workers to make the entirely rational economic decision to turn down those extra hours, to turn down that promotion if the benefit of the promotion um, doesn't cover the cost of the lost childcare. And so that makes our economy as a whole less productive because those folks are not working to their potential.
do you, I probably should look around to see if there is a wage. What I've never actually took a look at what does that benefit need to be until what wage, where it would make sense for someone to say, okay, now I can leave that benefit and then I can go ahead and accept that promotion. I haven't ever actually looked at that, but that's
Well, we looked at that a few years back when I was on the United Way Planning and Investment Committee, and uh, it turns out that figuring out where those cliffs are is a whole lot more complicated than it might seem. Um,
mm,
we we brought on a professor from Ohio State, a friend of mine, and uh, he uh, he wound up not being able to quantify a lot of the things that he was expecting to, just because the whole system's so complex.
mm, it is. It's amazing that for the people who have to even get benefits, that they're able to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
So, changing vein just a little bit, though, from an economist's point of view, what are the benefits to businesses economically to promote diversity? And knowing also that, we are going to have to continue to attract talent, and some of that talent is going to be immigrants, assuming that everything gets fixed in our system.
Hmm.
What are the economic benefits? I believe there are. I'm
Oh,
hoping you
certainly,
tell me there are.
certainly. There is there are personal benefits, there are business benefits, and there are benefits to the broader economy of really focusing on diversity. Um, at the beginning of and the end of a day, it's really just righting a systemic wrong that's been with us for centuries. But uh, if you promote diversity in your business, what it means to your employees that they're able to bring their whole selves to work. And that's going to make them happier in their jobs, less able, less, um, less eager to quit their jobs, uh, more invested in the company. From the standpoint of your customer base, it's going to allow you to meet the needs of your customers because your staff looks more like your customer base. That's a great thing. As people uh, are more productive as a result of these diversity and inclusion initiatives, the economy benefits because output grows. Individual people are generating more output, so the output of the overall economy is higher. So yeah, it is very, very important, and I hope this is not just a moment. I hope it's an ongoing thing.
I am with you on that. I am with you on that. So I would like to ask you, I found this.
Oh,
This is Bill's book, and it's talking about knowledge economies and knowledge work. One of my questions, especially, well, first of all, I hope you'll sign this for me next time I see you.
absolutely. Thank you.
What when we've shifted in Columbus and Central Ohio, in the core of Central Ohio, anyways, to much more of a knowledge economy than a major production economy. What are the things that we should be making sure that what are the old things we should be letting go of or not emphasizing as much, and what you'll be focused on in a knowledge economy? I'm thinking
Well,
education.
well, the uh, thing is that the knowledge economy shift is one that's been going on for 70 years or more. Um, and Columbus was actually very early to the game. Obviously, we have state government here, which is knowledge work. We have the banks and the insurance companies and the corporate headquarters that developed over the past, what, 70 or 80 years. And so that too is knowledge work. But the whole point is that the value of knowledge and knowledge production has really, really come to the fore as as companies switch to a service orientation from a production orientation. Um, it's become central to how workers work, um, and how companies compete. And so um, we've had the advantage here in Central Ohio of having this knowledge base, which is certainly fed by our colleges and universities. Um, we've had the advantage of being able to grow faster than average and um, attract the kind of talent that we need to feed these companies. Uh, we worked together on that study a couple years ago on uh, the impact of Smart Columbus on workforce.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
just the most recent example of this very long-term, very beneficial trend to us. The point, though, too, is that the knowledge economy has not replaced the industrial economy in the same way that the industrial economy did not replace the agricultural economy. But what happened was the knowledge economy transformed those other two economies so that they operate much more efficiently than they did before, and they're able to compete on a global basis, even though they face a higher labor cost than a lot of other places do. The What was I going to say? Edit this out because I have to think for a moment.
Sure,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. Um, oh, um, the whole point is that if we are going to continue to compete effectively in the knowledge economy, with the rise of artificial intelligence and all these new technologies coming in that are going to fundamentally change the way we all do our jobs. We're going to have to invest more and more and more in training and education. And the business sector is going to have to be on the hook for at least some of it, perhaps a good part of it,
Mhm.
because every company is going to have to ensure that their own workforce is effective within the system that they themselves have created.
Do you think that there is, because the knowledge economy is going to have such, I mean, because technology, not the knowledge economy, you're right, we've been in it, but because technology uh, is more and more permeating how we do our jobs, and a lot of our jobs are knowledge based as well. Do you think that there is a danger of the income gap, the wealth gap growing wider if we don't invest more in education? And that's a fear that I have.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's a gap both of uh, that's knowledge in nature, educational background in nature, and it's also geographical. Um, I talk in the book about the difference between local economies that have ready access to broadband internet and those that don't. I give the example of Vinton County, Ohio, where um, more than 40% of households don't even have an internet subscription. And that includes a third of households, nearly a third of households, that make $75,000 a year or more, which in Vinton County is definitely high income.
Substantial. Yes, it
Yeah,
absolutely is.
but the problem is there the just the painfulness of trying to load a modern website using a dial-up internet connection. eh, People just don't want to take the effort. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh, I remember those days. I couldn't imagine if I was still doing that now. I
yeah,
couldn't imagine.
yeah. And at least 10 years ago, you could click a button on the website and switch to a text only mode.
Oh, that's right.
You can't anymore.
That. Yeah, that's a good
I,
point.
I can't imagine it take all afternoon to bring on a website.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I think we could have a podcast for a couple hours. I'm so enjoying this conversation. So let me, when we were working 2 years ago on our future of smart work study, I think I asked you every other day, well, when are we getting this recession, Bill? When's the recession? Can you tell me when the recession is coming? And then we had the pandemic. So
Yeah.
tell me, was the pandemic our recession? And that kind of all bets are off and we're just on our way up at this point? Or what do you think?
Yeah, the pandemic was our recession. There were a lot of people at the beginning of 2020 who thought that a recession was right around the corner. Um, and the reason for that thought was mostly that it had been so long since we had one. We went almost 11 years with no recession, which was the longest period of expansion in US history. But uh, the point that I made at the time is that expansions don't die of old age. They die because something gets out of whack. And at the beginning of 2020, we were growth was slowing, but I don't think there was any serious economist, or very few, who thought that a recession was imminent in at the beginning of 2020. Um, Most economists were saying that we were good at least for 2020, maybe for 2021. Um, but um, but then something got out of whack in in spades, and that was our recession. Uh, and so, given the rate of growth in GDP that we're seeing now, given the level of savings, household savings that are still sitting on the sidelines, um, that and the recovery of consumer sentiment, which is absolutely essential. People are going to get out. They're already getting out and spending. Um, and that increase in consumer expenditures is going to lead to an increase in business investment so that businesses can support this higher level of demand. And so, yeah, we are off and running. The big problem now is the supply bottlenecks, and that includes the supply of labor. And
Mhm.
the biggest concern that I see economists having now is not with the recession, but with inflation. Uh,
That would have been my question if you didn't say it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but uh, we've got the tools to control inflation.
Mhm.
We may see an increase in interest rates um, sooner rather than later, and that's going to help tamp down the inflation uh, fueled, or the demand fueled inflation.
Right, right. Well, that's good to know. I can tell you, I myself am contributing to that consumer sentiment.
So are we.
Yeah. Give me a good day at Target and I'm just happy.
Yeah, I had mine yesterday.
Well, okay, so I am going to wrap this up with a question that I've asked all my guests, Bill.
Mhm.
If you had the opportunity to go back to your 18-year-old self, what career advice or any advice would you give yourself now, knowing what you know now?
Well, when I was 18, um, I was wanting to be a portfolio manager. I was wanting to take over Wall Street. Um, and I was completely focused on that. And as a result, um, my uh, bachelor's and master's I did very well in because I knew where I was going. But obviously, I've wound up in a different place. But the advice that I would give myself is just to be flexible, to recognize opportunities when they present themselves, to take risks, which I wasn't too keen on back then. I
Mhm.
guess the whole process of starting my own business was a bigger risk than I've ever taken before. But
Mhm.
just to know where you're going, but recognize that you wind up somewhere else.
That is great, great advice. So I hope we hope that some of our young adults in our programs, we encourage them to watch these. So I hope they take your advice because I think that's awesome advice.
Thank you.
So Bill, this has been really such a pleasure. Thank you again for spending time with me here and for all of our partnership. Actually, we partnered with you and we always think of you first because we appreciate what you bring to the table. So thank
Thank
you
you so
very
much.
much.
Thank you,
And,
Lisa. It's been a
oh,
pleasure.
good. So for all of our watchers, please stay tuned for the next Workforce 3.0, and I'll see you soon.